going to start the dedication, and my name is Ron Blair. This is Sean Morrissey. We're part of the Nady committee, and we're very pleased that you're all here today. We're here really for three principal reasons. One, to honor the generosity and the legacy of Robert Nady. Second is to acknowledge and honor the people who helped make this event happen. And the third thing is to honor the land itself. And we're going to start today's event off with our mayor. Where is she? Connie Harrison Boyer. She is the 6th generation Jefferson County inn, and it's possible that your forebears did business with either the McElhinneys or the Nadys. It's a possibility. So without further ado, Connie Harrison, please. Boyer.
So thanks everybody for coming, and what a beautiful day, first of all, for this. Perfect, it's not 110. And but also, I just want to say, thank you to this committee for the hard work and the several years we've put together, you have put together for doing this. I know we've had to, and you have had to especially be very patient in waiting on the land to do what you wanted it to do, right?
Yeah.
And to the Nady family for giving us this beautiful gift that we get to enjoy for generations and generations. The thing that I want to point out is, as we've progressed in Fairfield, and we have high-tech jobs here and more progressive ways of doing things, we are grounded here. This is where we come back to be grounded, to connect with nature. And that is even more important, in my view, is to always connect with nature and learn from its wisdom, and have that settled feeling while we go out and do our jobs, and have that progress in our community, which is wonderful too. So we've got these both things that help balance us out, and just thank you again for this beautiful gift, and we'll take care of it the best way we know how, and it's a beautiful legacy for many generations to come. Thank you so much.
Okay, my name's Sean Morrissey. My involvement with this is kind of from a distance. I am on the committee that helped set this up, but the Jefferson County Conservation Board takes care of a lot of parks in the county, but not this complex. The Park and Rec does that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I got given a list yesterday of people I'm going to be talking about that helped with the project, and we'll do that in a little bit. One man's name is not on this list, Ron Blair, and I think I think obviously a lot of you know him, but the Robert Nady donation is a very special thing. Obviously, that's the reason we're all here. But there's been another gift given by Ron. He's kind of been the organizer of putting this all together. I'm not sure this would have happened. Obviously, we needed Robert, but Ron has definitely been a driving force in getting this all planted, signage, benches, you name it, all the way going on the last 10 years. So we definitely want to acknowledge that. And he's done a lot for the community as well. I'll mention a couple other people that are not here today. Doug Ensminger works for the NRCS, which is under the FSA. He kind of helped get this into CRP, which is helping to pay for some of the stuff that's gone on, and ultimately led to the seeding of all this nice prairie you see. Some of you may not know this was a corn and bean field for years, so it's nice from a conservation standpoint to see something kind of put out to pasture, so to speak, and it'll be nice for the wildlife as well as the people of the community. And one other person that's not here that was very helpful was Kevin Anderson, and he's a DNR biologist that also kind of helped us, you know, make sure we get the right seating mix and that kind of thing. And it's just been a lot of, that's why I mentioned Ron. He's very good at finding the people that need to give some input on this and make it turn out the way it has. And I think it'll be a nice addition to the waterworks, and the Pleasant Lake or number 2 reservoir. It kind of makes it into a nice big park complex, and I think it'll be good for the community for many years. So.
Sean didn't mention that he is a director of the Jefferson County Conservation Board, and they just do amazing work. How many county parks do you guys oversee?
We have 12 areas in the county.
12 areas in the county.
1,400 acres.
Yeah, so, yeah, she just does fantastic work. So, Steve Brower, you want to stand up for us? Yes. So, Steve Brower, no, you got to keep standing here. Yeah, you got to yeah. Steve is a landscape architect out of Burlington, Iowa. Whoa, we've got... Steve's sort of known as a prairie specialist. I think we can say that. He oversaw the master planning for the Mount Pleasant High School prairie system, and also very involved with the Aldo Leopold philosophy. He's from Burlington, as I just mentioned, and his group has purchased 2 of the original Leopold homes up on the bluff overlooking the Mississippi. They do tremendous educational availability to the community. So Steve designed this beautiful master plan, and then it had to be sort of refined into CRP or limited into CRP. But Steve's given us a huge amount of time and attention. He helped also design down by the water and in the woodland area. So let's give a warm round of applause for Steve Brower. And if anybody has prairie projects, talk to him after that's a free plug, Steve. Let's see, next up is,
So yeah, I'll just mention the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation was also involved with this when the conservation easement was being developed, and they're kind of a statewide organization that helps cities and counties and other entities and helps the private owner turn that over, the donation process. There have been a couple other parks in the county recently. The Neff Wetland, if you're familiar with that, came through the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation to the Conservation Board. One of their first areas is on the west side of Fairfield called Whittam Woods, and we help manage that for them. They are actually the owner of that property as well. So, and there's been a few other, if you go clear back to Lamson Woods, that was also an area donated to the city to be a park for eternity, and that's how special this is. This is something that we may not realize it, but it's going to be enjoyed by generations to come. And also we mentioned the JCCB, or the Jefferson County Conservation Board. We're all kind of working together for the same goal with the Park and Rec, and providing these open spaces and parks to the people of the county. So,
Pam and Ed, you're going to have to stand up. I know you probably don't want to, but you're going to have to stand up. So Pam Kraft is the head of the Parks Department in Fairfield, and Ed is her longtime lieutenant and close worker with her. I've worked with Pam for, I think, close to 25 years, starting with the Loop Trail back in 1998. When she retires in a few years, she's finally going to be able to get rid of me. But I have to say, honestly speaking, Pam is the hardest working employee that I've ever had the privilege to interact with. I mean, just on a physical level, day in and day out, day after day, it's quite amazing to me how much time and effort and attention, quality she puts into her work. It's a really a gem for Fairfield. Her park staff is sort of small, and it means that she and Ed have to do a tremendous amount of work. Yeah, so they'll be mowing, and we're hoping to be able to culture some volunteers who live either in who are either prairie enthusiasts or who are neighbors that can help with some volunteerism on this project. But I totally want to thank you both, and I want to give them a good round of applause. Yeah. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, guys. All the wooden signs that you'll see routed out, that was all done by Ed over this winter time. You know, somebody else I wanted to acknowledge, and I'm really disappointed they're not here, and that is Larry Deers and his son, J.D. Deers' family goes back to his father, Julius, was a contractor. Larry is a farmer. He was the tenant farmer here for Robert, and Robert, I remember Robert telling me once on the phone that Larry's a good steward of the land, and after Robert donated the land, Larry could have said, hey, I've got, you know, other things to do, moving on with my life, but he's planted there's a food plot over to the, what would it be, to the west over here, has to be planted yearly for the animals. It's part of the CRP program. Every year, Larry plants that. He put in, let's see, he widened the B Street parking lot. That's been done recently. All the benches, all the bike racks, all the wooden posts. They install the kiosks. The city's Department of Public Works moved this over from the community orchard, where it's just been sitting kind of unused for the last many years, and we're going to put it to good use. But the Deers have done everything, and they do it not only methodically, but they have big, machinery and equipment, and you sort of think that they're just sort of rough and burly guys, but they do everything really refined and really sensitive, and really where exactly, should we have this bike rack, and how much rock do you want, and how wide, and they're just this project would not have happened without the Deers' time and attention. So in absentia, would you give them a nice round of applause? Yeah. I'm going to have it back to you.
So we've talked about how good this is for the community and the people and that kind of thing, but there's some other benefits going on, and Ron asked me to talk a little bit about the prairie.
I missed one key, and that is it's calling up both Brittany Tiller, who's the naturalist for Jefferson County Conservation Board, and Sean, and they're going to talk about the prairie and what prairie actually means. I'm sorry.
Anyway, yeah, I was getting to that, but so we're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of prairie real briefly, and maybe the history. Most of you probably are aware, but the great soil in Iowa was built by the prairie over thousands of years. When the settlers came through this area, it was prairie. 80% of the state, they say, was prairie. And most of that has been productive farm ground for many years, and they say of the original prairie, only 0.1% remains. So anytime you can put back some, that's good now. And the reason that's good, there's some stuff that have gone on with the wildlife and things like butterflies and honeybees have really gone into a decline in recent years, and a lot of that is because what they need is gone. They need this kind of, the pale beard tongue or the different flowers that bloom throughout the summer. They need that all summer long. So that's the obvious benefit of this is we've put in a 40-acre chunk now that's going to kind of help reverse that and help those things that are hanging on. There's definitely more than just a few butterflies and bees that benefit, but that's one of the benefits. And obviously with the 2 city reservoirs, there's water quality benefits, there's human benefits that we've talked about, the trails and the recreation and that kind of stuff. So it's a very good thing. It's nice to see, rather than loss of habitat continue, we've kind of put something back, and it gives more benefits than just a park. It's kind of a benefit to the ecology and the wildlife in the area. And Brittany can talk a little bit about the signs and things that have gone in that are hopefully going to help people understand. Sometimes they just want to, oh, we got new property, let's plant a bunch of trees, or let's do this or that. I think we have a better understanding now that this is what should be here, but the signage and stuff that's been put out will help with that.
When Ron asked us to speak, I told Sean I want to speak first so he doesn't take all the good nuggets, darn it. But I got to be on the signage committee for this project with Kevin Anderson and Kari Beating, and we were able to, and I'm going to just say Ron wasn't supposed to be necessarily on our committee, but he's on our committee. He helps kind of steer us and direct us. But we have 8 different interpretive signs out there, just kind of with the goal to be more passive interpretation as we educate people or continue to educate people on the importance of prairie. I'm a huge monarch, butterfly, and pollinator fan, and so we've got a nice display out there for that, and so we try to have a good mix of signage out there. So hopefully when you walk the area today, you'll notice some of those. They're a mix of signs from a company called Pulse, and then also local graphic designer Paul Steamson. So it was a great collaborative work on that. That's all I have to say.
Are you going to be bringing some of your kids into here for nature tours?
Yeah, well, this will be one of our educational tools, this prairie, that will hopefully be able to get students or the public out here for different tours.
Great, thanks. So this is a quick acknowledgement for old timers. Not anybody here, but old timers from our city's past. Ed Malloy was our mayor for 16 years, something like that. Anyway, this project began under his mayorship, and he was very, very supportive of this whole project, did a lot to make this happen, and I was hoping Ed might be here today, but I just wanted to tip my hat to him. And Kent Rice, there you are. You want to stand up for a moment? He wasn't expecting this. But Kent is one of the key people to make the Loop Trail happen, and was one of my major people to work with and to bounce ideas off of, and vice versa. And when we first started developing the very first section of Loop Trail, this was one of that section. And I forgot to mention that Larry Deers, in addition to doing all the things I mentioned, as a contractor, helped build this section of trail that goes from B Street over to Pleasant Plain. So normally we would get 30-foot wide easements. That would be about the maximum amount of land that a homeowner or a landowner was willing to grant to us. And they would even balk about that, saying, why 30 feet? You only have a 10-foot trail. Well, you have to have that other land for shoulders and engineering and so forth and so on. So we did get a 30-foot easement from Robert, which was right against the Lakeview Estates fence line. And I won't say any names, but somebody was very unhappy that we were going to be right next to their house, and it was going to disturb their privacy, and they were quite irate about it. So Kent and I took a ride up to Nevada, Iowa, and we met with Robert, back in his, he had an office in back of the house where he had his concrete business going, and we showed him the master plan. Now remember, he had offered to give us 30 feet already, and everything else was cropped. And so Ken and I showed him our plan, and and he looks at us and says, well, how much land do you want for this additional easement? And I can't remember if we said 100 or 125 feet, but one or the other, and he just said, okay. Yeah, I mean, he took additional land out of production, and with great generosity gave us that full 125 feet, which allowed us to move the trail all the way over to the north as far as we could go. And it was just a great example of Robert's generosity, and also Kent's generosity of willing to take the time to go up to Nevada and to meet with the landowner. We had 23 easements, I believe, for this entire, for the loop trail. And what happened in the beginning was people were a little wary, and we got 25-foot easements, 25-year easements in the beginning. And then as the momentum built, we were able to get perpetual easements and be able to go back to all the people who had given us 25 and to switch them over to perpetual easements. So please give a round of acknowledgement to Kent Rice for all of his hard work on the trail project. Park and Rec Foundation, yes.
Okay, a couple other entities. There's a lot of people involved with this that we wanted to mention, and the past mayor and the current mayor have been very helpful and supportive of this Nady committee that's been working on this. But the Park and Rec Foundation and the Park and Rec Board both have kind of, from the sidelines, allowed us to develop this and work on this property. I'm sure they have plenty to do, so they didn't mind that, but they're very important to this as well. And then the women's club, did anybody make it from that? They were helpful, and they're tracking down some of the history, the McElhinney name. They take care of the McElhinney house, which isn't far from here. Kind of another historical family that's related to this, and they've been helpful as well. And then we have another, get someone else to talk to you instead of Ron and I, but Joan Saltz is here, and she's a very active volunteer in the community, and she is involved with the Historic Commission here in the county. I know she's worked with the Bonneville Cabin as they keep it maintained, and I think the Mazdam Barns, and dozens of other things. She's a past Chamber Citizen of the Year, but she can talk to you a little bit about what the Historic Commission has going on.
All right, so I'm one that has to have a piece of paper in front of me. But when Ron called me and wanted me to say something about the Historic Preservation Commission, I thought, oh, what is historic preservation? And so I looked up some information, and I kept coming back to this one source, and it was the National Parks Service. And it said, historic preservation is a conversation with our past about our future. It provides us with opportunities to ask, what is important in our history? And what parts of our past can we preserve for future generations? Historic preservation is not just about buildings, equipment, furniture, historic papers, photographs, books, or clothing, but it is also about preserving forests, farm ground, and land areas. As was said, I am chairperson of the Jefferson County Historic Preservation Commission. Our commission members are Mark Schaefer, Mickey Kerr, Leon Conley, Stan Plum, and our county supervisor, Susie Drish. We promote the use of landmarks and districts of historic and cultural significance as places for the education, pleasure, and welfare of the people of Jefferson County. And one such landmark that was noted that we oversee is the preservation of Bonneville Cabin in Waterworks Park, which is just back this direction about a half mile. And we have received grants for building preservation, chimney and roof repair for the cabin, and we have more projects that will be needed in the future. I have lived here in this area all my life, about 1.5 miles northeast of here, and have 50 acres of land 1 mile north on B Street this direction. And we have this in a conservation reserve program, CRP, with 5 acres started with Nady Prairie grasses and flowers 20 years ago. So we appreciate conservation. So I see the Nady Prairie Park property as a nice addition to this area. The former owner, Bob Nady, as you have heard, gave this land to the city with the intention that it never be developed. So the Nady Committee was formed to administer the land and decided that the best use was restored prairie with walking trails. And of course you have obtained various grants to do this. We appreciate that the Nady Committee wishes to restore this area back to the tall grass prairie, so to help future generations understand that this landscape represents safeguarding the existence and appearance of historical prairie grasses and flowers. We thank the Nady family for donating these acres and your insight to preserving the land. Thank you very much.
Connie, there she is. So a quick shout out to the city of Fairfield. I have said this before. It's really wonderful to work on the city level. Everybody's pulling the oar in the same direction. There's no rancor of bipartisanship. There's no lobbyists. It's just simple people doing their job. I acknowledged Pam and Ed earlier, incredibly hard workers. Another person who I've had the pleasure to work with for the last couple of decades is Daryl Biscard. He is head of the Department of Public Works. His crew moved this kiosk from over by Chautauqua Park all the way over to here. He put the rock down for the B Street parking lot. Agreeable, wonderful person who will always help if it makes sense and it fits within the guidelines. So I wanted to do a shout out for the city. City Council has been supportive of this project, and we lobbied the City Council. We'll tell you a little bit more at the very end, but we lobbied the City Council to say, now that the Nady land has been planted and we have additional CRP funds coming in, can we use those funds for helping restore and protect other sensitive environmental areas? So we've had great help and support from the city of Fairfield across the board. Connie, certainly been a huge supporter of this whole project. I think you're up now.
A couple other real quick people. Like I said, there's a lot of people in the community that helped with this. Some of the signs and the components for the signs were made by a local company called Schaus Voorhees Manufacturing, and another sign maker, I believe, that made a couple of these here that you see, and there's some more on out there, was Signs and Designs out of Mount Pleasant. Whitney Monument helped with this nice piece here. Hopefully that'll be around for a long time and kind of tells the story of how this came about here.
I could talk a little bit about the Sierra Club and the Iowa Prairie Network, but actually what I prefer is for Ann Walton to come up. Ann is a new chairperson for the Sierra Club, and I think has a better grasp of Sierra Club and Iowa Prairie Network and how that relates to both this area and the other sensitive environmental areas that I just mentioned.
Well, thank you, Ron. This is very last minute. But I first want to say on behalf of the board of Sierra Club and all of our members, we're so pleased to see the net results of all of this time and effort invested in the Nady lands here. Should also say that for us, looking from a sort of broader perspective and looking at where the planet is right now, that 75% of the planet is impacted, on the land part alone, is impacted by humans. And as a result of that, there's been a huge loss of biodiversity. And this is important for us to understand because, as has been mentioned, biodiversity is important to our very existence on this planet. And I think if you look at the last 50 years, for instance, you'll see that the population on this planet has doubled in 50 years. And the economy, the world economy, has quadrupled. And as you look at this trajectory on a graph, if you look at the decline of biodiversity, it follows that very clearly. And so we at Sierra Club have identified the protection and the conservation of wildlands is one of our top 4 priorities for the next 3 years on out. But we have a very articulated plan for the next 3 years. So this is very complimentary, and I wish that that Steve was here today so that he could speak more to this because he's our chair of our Wildlands Committee. But when we look at the changes on the planet, we see that we have to bring this back to the local level. And as was mentioned earlier in Iowa, at the time of European settlement here, there was thought to be about 30 million acres of prairie land here. And now there's, as I said, 0.1% of prairie land left. And it's very fragmented land. And obviously, it's very important to biodiversity, which is part of what our focus is about. And prairie lands not only harbor biodiversity, but they're very important for pollinators, and that's also important for farming. So it's not just about the protection of the prairie land itself. It's also important to water quality. If you see, we're sitting on a knoll, and where does water go in a watershed? It seeks the lowest point. So it goes to Pleasant Lake in this direction, it goes to the reservoir in that direction. And a prairie is a great filtration system, so it's really important for our water quality. Also, if you look at it from the standpoint of carbon sequestration and pulling carbon out of the air, of course, it's a great absorber of carbon and also storer of carbon. So it has so many incredible functions that we have to appreciate. And then, of course, for all of us who spent the last year basically on lockdown, just having the intrinsic value of a natural place like this is really important to our well-being. So not only from the ecosystem services, but from a just, a healing standpoint, it's really important to all of us. So we want to thank you. That's been this is a huge contribution to our healing, but also looking forward. It's really about not us so much. This is great for us to have now in our lifetime, but looking forward to future generations. And it's the principle of 7 generations. Think about what you're leaving behind, and this is such a great example. So I do want to thank you on behalf of Sierra Club for this profound contribution to the future. Thank you.
We're going to, we have actually 10 Nady family members here from around the state. I'm going to ask them to stand in a moment, and both Zoe and Alex would like to say a few words. This is the very end of our dedication event. Last thing for me to say is to acknowledge the Nady committee members, several of who you've met. You've met Sean Morrissey, you've met myself, you've met Brittany Tiller. Kari Beatty, please stand. Kari is a administrator and educator over at the MIU Sustainable Living Center. We also have Kevin Anderson was mentioned, DNR. Mark Smith, who owns The Ride, the bike shop in town, who's also a certified burn specialist and has done I think 2 burns here in the Prairie and 1 down along B Street. Lee Shepman, he's the president of the Silver Lakes Homeowners Association, but also an enthusiastic outdoor person who's gives value to our group, and finally Roland Hecker, who is both on the Park and Recreation Board and our board, so that he sort of acts as a liaison between the two. If anybody's interested in doing any volunteerism on this wonderful land going forward, please see me after the event. So I'm going to invite, actually I'm going to ask the Nady family to stand for a moment so we can all give you our acknowledgement. And yeah, everybody here with the Nady family, please stand. Look at that. Great. Ray, you are definitely part of the Nady family. Yes. Thank you. And now, thank you. So, and invite Zoe and Alex to come up, and you both want to come up and say a few remarks, and then after your concluding remarks, we're going to ask the whole family to come and do a ribbon cutting on the other side, facing us, and we'll give you the scissors. Okay.
Well, I first met Ron, about 2011?
Yeah.
Right around there. And Sean Morrissey, also. You were there, out at the conservation. I think I met you. You don't remember, I had hair then. And then Ed Malloy, the mayor at the time. And I'm glad that Ron was the principal driver of this. He was the principal driver of me returning his phone calls, and I appreciate that. Sometimes I drop the ball a little bit, and Ron's spot on. And I want to thank you, Ron, for working with my grandfather, Bob, to help facilitate something that was very important to him, and to dedicate ever since 1998, as you said, with the start of the trails, and then you plant a nice seed, and then you get, 60 feet more easement in, and then before you know it, you got a whole prairie. So I want to thank everybody here involved. I didn't realize how many were involved, and I appreciate how much more work has been into this than just on the surface of what you see. So I want to thank you all.
You probably expect me to say something like, if Dad were here, he'd be so pleased with this. Look around. Dad is here, and he is pleased with this. Thank you for honoring my family.
Okay, on the count of 3, 1, 2,